Please welcome Alua Arthur to the Magic Hour. Yay!
Yay!
Hi!
Hi.
Thank you for with us today.
Hello, I wanted to tell you your name, Going with Grace, is so perfect because in how Mercedes said, like you offer grace and ease for people in their 11th hour. And I was telling Mercedes before the show that all morning my anxiety was so bad I couldn't hold down food. It was like, I was like the worst anxiety I felt in a while. And as soon as you got on and you smiled at me, I just felt so much ease and grace. And I just felt like, I can breathe. It's like my first deep breath of the day. So you really embody everything that your bio says.
You do have that vibe for sure.
Thank you, guys. I'm really excited to be talking to you today. And I also want to note that perhaps that ease came through because you saw myself reflected in you because of these beautiful diastemas we've got.
Yes, what do they mean?
Oh, gosh, so many things in so many different places. In Ghana, it's a mark of beauty, but I've heard a bunch of things. I'm sure you probably have too.
People London. Yeah.
Lust in parts of South America.
Oh.
Some people say it's a sign of an oracle in a woman.
Oh.
Yeah. A lot of different
people tell me to close it, but I'm not going to do it.
And you can't hold the gap down anyway. You can't hold a good gap down.
No, honestly. That's one of the things I love most about you, Jade. It would be weird to see you without it. I don't know. It would just be so weird.
The first thing Joe Rogan told me was, don't ever close that gap, girl.
Great.
It's always awkward statements, though, coming along with it.
I know, it is.
Right. All right. Alua, I got to ask you, what's it like when someone asks you what you do for a living? Like, how does that conversation go?
It's normally a number of things. It's either they turn around and go the other direction, or they say, oh my gosh, that's so interesting, and change the subject immediately. That's not as often, though, as people that say, wow, that's fascinating. And then they want to process grief or tell me about an experience that they had. And people are also often saying, I wish you'd been there when my mother, brother, sister, father, somebody died. Something else that happens is people just really lean in and they get really curious. Like, do you talk to the dead? Are you killing people? Like, they just don't understand really what the term entails. But I find it to usually be an opportunity for people to get confronted with, for better or worse, idea of mortality, their own mortality. Because just by virtue of me saying what I do, people immediately start thinking about death. And I'm for 100%.
So can you describe for our listeners what a death doula is?
Sure. So what I do is I support people in all of the end of life. I is essential in order for people to contemplate their dying and also to answer all the questions that they might need to, everything that they need to do in order to create a peaceful death. I help them with that. So it's when people are healthy, I work with them to create a very comprehensive end-of-life plan or work with their fears and anxieties around death. When people are getting close to the end of life, I help them do their best to create a peaceful death as possible, them and the people around them. And then after a death, I help family members and loved ones wrap up all of the practical affairs of their loved one's life.
Cool. Yeah, and we're going to get so much deeper into that, but I wanted to ask just a kind of random question. Do you use the term death often in your work, or do you use a different word for it?
I use death.
You do?
Intentionally. Yeah, I use it on purpose. Sometimes I say end of life, but I prefer death because it makes people think, you know? It's not a juicy term. It's not a euphemism. I'm not stepping around it. I'm calling it. And death can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't foreclose the possibility of a transition into something else. But what it doesn't do is hide what is happening, which is the death of something. The body is going through some process that needs to be identified and called.
For sure.
How do you think that we currently view death in our culture here in the U.S.?
Oh my goodness. I think we're a largely death avoidant culture. Some people say death phobic, but I think that we're just avoidant. It's funny because we see death all the time, like popular culture and movies and entertainment and music. There's so much music now that talks about death. Yet when it comes to ourselves or our family members and people we love, we want to push it off at all costs. Healthcare systems bless doctors for all the incredible work that they do. But what has happened is that science and technology has made it possible for us to keep people alive for a very long period of time, which means that we fight when death is coming. Death is seen as some sort of failure somehow, rather than the natural progression of a body. Like, we get old, we die. We get sick, we die. Yeah. Sometimes we don't even get old before we get sick and die. So it's just what happens, yet we avoid it so much through, everything. Makeup, beauty, exercise, wellness, so many things, I feel like.
That's interesting you bring up beauty. Like, we literally are trying to stay young in so many ways, especially women. You know, we take such drastic measures to keep this youthfulness about us. Like, we are just denying death every chance we possibly get.
Have you read the poem, and I'm saying this days after she passed away, have you read the poem by Mary Oliver, When Death Comes?
I have.
Oh God,
Man.
it's so good that I kind of want, if I have a tombstone, that the few sentences, when it's over, I want to say all my life, I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. Like, what a beautiful way to, and it's interesting that in her death, her words lifted us up when we were sad that she passed, you know?
Absolutely. Can I ask you a question? You say, if I have a tombstone, does that mean you want to be buried?
I don't want to be buried, so I'm not sure. So I'm thinking that I want to be something to do with a tree. So maybe it can be carved into the tree or something. I don't know. I also would like it to say, she loved it here.
That's perfect.
Maybe if it's like, I don't know, something that I'm like, maybe I'm made into something. I don't know. But whatever it is, I would like those two things to be carved on there.
Good.
Yeah.
Now we all know it's.
I know, right? We have a little inkling into what Jade wants there.
Yeah. And I don't like it.
Wait, I think you're still deciding on that. The last time we talked about this, you were
I
still
know.
deciding if you want your journals hidden or written.
I know.
That's a rich one, right? Because we have so many deep personal thoughts in there. And I think I'd be kind of horrified by somebody reading some of the things while I'm living, but after I'm dead,
yeah.
Well, this podcast has become my living journal, so there's not much that I haven't shared on here. So at this point, just listen to the show and you're reading my journal, basically. So I that's really deep, what you said about how we view death in our culture. And that is true. I didn't think of beauty that way, but that is so true. And I know Mercedes touched on that too. How does ancient wisdom play a role in your work?
Well, I find that we have the possibility to learn so much from how we've done it before, not only in terms of how we die, but also how we approached the dying and how we approach ritual and ceremony around the end of life. Our culture now, I don't think, does a very good job of ritual marking different phases in life, like the shift of women from girls to women when we start menstruating. My mom took us out on dates to mark that something important had happened. But yeah, that's
my
right.
friend had a party for her daughter when she started her period.
It's really cute.
Everyone wore red.
Yeah,
I love it.
tremendous. Oh, I'm gonna borrow that idea.
It's hilarious.
Surrounding ways for centuries before, and different cultures do different ways. America doesn't so well. And so we can find ways to tie in ancient wisdom into how we revere the dying, how we honor death. Yeah. And my work aims to do that with people and aims to bring that into the forefront as people are getting close to the end of life.
So what's the story that brought you to being a death doula? Like, how did you end up in this line of work?
My goodness, I'll try and keep it short. So here's the short version, the long, short version. I was practicing law and I was terribly depressed and was meditating, started thinking about this kid from the 90s named Elian Gonzalez. He was Cuban, and went to the library later and met a guy who had this book that said Cuba te espera on it. Cuba is waiting. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went to Cuba, met a woman on a bus that had uterine cancer. I met her on the bus. She had uterine cancer. We started talking about her life, her death, what it would mean if she died from this disease. I asked her all these really tough questions. I had her look at her body in the grave. I had her just digging in. Yeah. And during that bus ride, I was like, yo, everybody here is going to die. Everybody, her, me, the bus driver, everyone. Why are we not talking about this? Why is it something that feels like a secret somehow? And that I'm asking her these questions, So on that bus ride, I got pretty clear I was going to be helping people prepare for death. The interesting thing about that story is that she ended up staying on the bus with me, and we ended up in the guest house that I'd rented. And as we're going to bed that night, she reminded me that before I got on the bus earlier on that day, I was running through the town and a car had almost hit me. And when the car had almost hit me, I slammed my hands on the hood and I was like, oh my God, girl, get it together. She was in that car that had almost hit me earlier. And isn't that something? I get goosebumps every single time I tell this.
That's like a Dan Fogelman movie.
Totally. It was literally a crash course with what was going to be my life's work. Yeah. It took a while until I understood exactly how I carried this out. But I went home clear that death was it. I just didn't know how it was going to come to pass. But there was no doubt in my mind. No doubt.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's wild.
That's how death came about.
So then the universe has been, you've been recognizing where the universe has been conspiring for you for a long time now.
Yo, the uni's my homegirl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got my back.
Sure. All right. So I know I've struggled a lot with the idea of death and especially all the existential questions that come along with it. We recently had on this dream expert on our show, Len Worley, and I expressed some of my most heavy dreams. And during that conversation, I uncovered really some of my deepest fears. And perhaps the deepest was the idea of being alone, which I think ultimately relates to the fear of my loved ones dying, to the fear of my own death. And I'm wondering if a person like you, who's done so much work around death, still holds those fears or any of those fears, or have you been able to work through them? Do you recognize that fear in yourself?
I do. I sit with it. Work through is perhaps a really high bar, but I sit with them often and I dig into them. When I think about my own death, the things that bring me discomfort, not feeling as though my work won't be done. Although I recognize that when I'm dying, my work will actually be done because there'll be nothing left for me to do in that moment other than rest on the laurels of what I've done before. So that's the thing that brings me the most discomfort, is not being done somehow. But, my brain says, well, duh, you'll be done. You can't not be when you're dying. So that's my biggest concern about my dying. Also, sometimes, I think on what I've done in life. And I think that as we get close to the hour of our death, it brings our life into really, really sharp focus as us thinking about death while we're still living. And I think about the things that I might regret and do my best to try to get them done now. But there are a couple of things that I'm like, man, I probably still really regret that if I don't do it. So, yeah. Like, if I died today, I think I'd be really sad I didn't have more sex.
No, me too, dinggummit.
Right?
Well, better get busy. So,
Really?
I brought up Mary Oliver. You know that famous line of hers, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? You hear that and you think that it's this like call to do as much as you can. What people don't, but one line is famous, but what people don't realize is that the rest of that poem talks about just grazing in a field and living simply and just enjoying being in nature. So it's so crazy that like we have that feeling of like for me, the reason why I think I fear death is because I have this terrifying feeling that I won't be able to, I won't get the chance to raise my kids. I won't see them grow old and become parents. And that's what makes me panic when I think of death. But I have a couple of friends that have experienced death, and they said in that moment, it's the most peaceful, most freeing feeling. And it took away their fear, whether it was like an open heart surgery or a car wreck where they were brought back in. So it's interesting because I know that in the moment of death, we'll probably just feel like at peace with it. But as of now, like Mercedes said, I've got some fear there.
That's totally normal. Totally normal what you're experiencing. There's fears of death are pretty much in like 4 major categories as far as I see them. And most of them stem down to these. A fear of a life not fully lived. That's, the regrets that we might have in life. The FOMO, which is kind of what you just mentioned. Obviously, it's not called FOMO by ancient philosophers, but in modern day, we understand it as such. A fear of the unknown, not knowing what's happening next, or if there is a next, or what happens at that moment. And also fear of the process of the body. Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be uncomfortable? What does that actually feel like? And so most fears of death fit somewhere in those large categories. And when I'm working with people around their fears, we often try to distill it down, because once we understand, like with any fear, once you see what it is and you can acknowledge it, you look at the root of it and then start working with the root, whatever is underneath that, to work with and continue to sit with that fear. Abating it is a really high bar, but recognizing, as you're doing, I think is already giving you some power back in the fear. Yeah.
Sure. I think of people like my best friend Tom, who we had on the show, and I'm like, I bet death trembles at the thought of taking them because they're living such full lives and they have so much to do. And I feel like I do have a lot to do, but I'm really behind schedule. So I think that maybe I'll live even longer because I'm behind schedule.
Look at that.
But I was also curious with the fear, we tend to bring this up a lot on the shows, I've noticed. Do you attribute that at all to any sort of deaths that happened in their past lives? Or is that have you not gone there with that?
I wonder. I don't talk about it too much with my clients unless they bring it up. But often people talk about this life more often than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I think
Stay
about
in the
past
now.
life things, I think about the fact that my water bottle is always with me, and I'm like constantly worried that if it's not there, I might be thirsty, and I wonder if I died of thirst before
Yeah,
because
interesting.
I need you.
Yeah. So I have the ability to do past life readings, and I've done them on myself too. And in one life, I was like a sex trafficking victim, and in another life, I was in a what do they call, what's the like professional word for a whorehouse?
A madam?
Yeah, but the house is called something. So I was a madam. Yes, yes.
Brothel.
Brothel. So I was a madam in a brothel. I was like the one in charge, and I always wore a mask. But I was really depressed and empty inside, and I didn't let anyone know who I was. And I killed myself in that, and I experienced that past life death. And I noticed with each death that I experienced in those readings, I healed a little bit from my fear and realized it also opened me up to why I had a little bit of fear, because those were traumatic deaths, right? So I was just curious if you had heard of or studied any of that, but I don't know for sure.
I'm curious. There's this book, I can't remember his name right now, but the book is called Life After Life, or The Journey of Souls. And he does past life regressions to work people through their previous deaths to understand what happens after death. I was just by the idea of what happened in between lives if we believe that there are lives after lives, And the if I say, because I work with my clients on whatever their belief system is, whatever their structure is, I work within it to get them really clear on what they believe rather than what I might think might be there.
Yeah. So go ahead, Marie.
I was just gonna, before we move off of this, we spoke about consciously using the word death earlier so as not to deny that it's our ultimate reality, our ultimate fate there. And I'd assume that there's a lot of denial and struggle with the fear surrounding death for most people. How do you help people get past the denial portion?
That's a big one. I don't really. I find my job to be to meet people wherever they are and then sit with them there. And if they start to show me that they're moving forward in a way, then we'll work with it. But I don't think it's ever my job to get somebody from denial to acceptance or denial to embracing unless they're ready for it themselves. Oftentimes when I'm working with somebody that has a strong denial of death, it means that they are probably getting close to the end of life and are still fighting the system or fighting death. And I'm using air quotes as I say fight, because there is no fight against the inevitable, right? It's coming. There's nothing that we can actually do against it. And so when that's present, the best I can do is to work with them wherever they are and try to understand what's at the root of it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, work with the root to see if we can excavate that a little bit and see what's going on there, which might eventually work them forward. But my intention is never to get anybody from one place to another, but rather just to be with them where they are. Yeah.
Do you ever feel some sort of desperation in the fact that, I don't know if desperation is the right word, but whenever I contemplate death and knowing that it's coming for all of us and the time that we spend here could matter or could not, like that seems so hopeless to think that it might not matter. You've seen so many people go through this, the end of their lives. What's your thoughts on that idea of maybe none of this even matters?
It strikes me often. It strikes me so often that when I think about the fact that 102 billion people have lived and died, 102 billion. There's currently 7.4 billion of us on the planet, and 250,000 people are dying every single day. How many of their names do we actually know or remember? That one death is so significant to somebody. That one death rocks somebody's socks probably for the rest of their lives. Yet after that person whose socks were rocked dies, that death is no longer as significant, unless it's somebody like Martin Luther King or Mary Oliver, who we're still talking about now. In 100 years, though, are people still going to keep talking about these folks? There 102 billion have come and gone. So I think very much about the significant insignificance of my life, and similarly, the insignificant significance of my life. Both things are present because in the 102 billion, I might make a mark on 50,000.
Right.
I'm playing it big, right? Yet to somebody, I am the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So it all matters and it all doesn't matter.
Yeah.
My life matters. It doesn't matter. Your lives matter tremendously. And
Also
big picture, who
don't matter
knows
at
if they'll actually matter?
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
that quote I read you yesterday, Mercedes. Wisdom is knowing I am nothing. Love is knowing I am everything. And between the two, my life moves.
Ooh, juicy.
It's good, right?
Who is that?
Yeah, that's what I said. I thought it was Mary Oliver, but it's an Indian sage, Nisargadatta. I don't know if I said that right, but
yes, and it came through our a friend of the show, Peter Craig.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Peter. So, what do people need to be considering now to make their deaths less scary and easier? Not just like the place they want to die, but like they're, mentally like wrap their head around the event of death and feel prepared, I guess.
One thing that I think is really useful is to meditate on it. Think of yourself and the body nearing the end and what that feels like and what that's going to be like, because it's going to bring regrets or fears or discomfort to the forefront. It's also going to create the opportunity for us to see what we want out of the time that we have right now. Because what I find really important about contemplating dying is giving me information about who I am and what I value. So an important thing to do is to start meditating on it. I think also very important, this is the opposite end of the spectrum, is to start doing some of the practical things around the end of life. Writing down your passwords, figuring out what you want done with your body after you die. Do you want a funeral? What do you think about life support? What do you think about life support? Do you want to be on it? Do you not? How long do you want to be on it? Are there some life support treatments that you're comfortable with, others that you aren't? Things like this really go into the idea of a peaceful death. A lot of us think of a peaceful dying as being 102.
Surrounded by your loved ones.
People all around, this glorious moment of release and surrender. Yet that's not the reality for most of us. And we have messy lives and we have stuff and we have heartache and difficult relationships. And so let's start working on them at this moment. Who do you want around you when you die, and what is your current state of relationship with them right now? What affairs, how are your affairs in order? Where are your finances like? What do you want done with all your stuff, all your extra stuff? What happens after you die, if anything at all? Like start thinking about those types of things to prepare a little bit. Because, I don't think it's something that we can ever truly be prepared for.
Yeah.
But I think spending some time contemplating it won't catch us by surprise when the time comes. How about that?
Or a little less.
One of my favorite books, you just reminded me of it, Tuesdays with Maury. It's all about his death, really. He's preparing to die, and it's really, really beautiful. But the whole time you're not thinking about your death because he's just inspiring you to live, So but that's really interesting. I need to do all of those things. All I know is what I told you guys, and I want people to blues dance. So that's all I know.
Dancing for sure.
I need to get the rest down on paper for sure, and probably get it notarized.
So I am just going to come out and be honest about this. When we got you on, when we knew we were getting you on this show, I was super excited about this because I already knew I had a bazillion questions. And then when I started writing them out to prepare for this interview with you, I literally filled like an entire notebook of questions.
This is the longest list of questions we've ever had for any guest.
So I'm going to apologize. I'm going to apologize to you.
You're going to use my ink.
Wonderful.
And every time you're answering a question, I'm writing down like, okay, wait, I want to know this. I need to know this.
I know.
But when you're just talking about how you started meditating on death and really like making that a part of your practice and finding so much healing in that, I wanted to know, first of all, if you've ever done like I don't know what the actual term for it is, but it's like you meditate you're actually dying. Like you meditate through an actual death and you kind of like envision yourself dying. Have you done that, and has that been a powerful practice?
Yeah, I've done it for myself, but it's also a service that I offer. So I do them with other people. Like I offer death meditations where we sit and walk through the eventual decline of the body and then into whatever might come next for them, and then stay there and watch the body wither and deteriorate, and then bones and dust and no more. Yeah, it's a very powerful experience.
Have you done that with people that are nearing the end of their lives?
No, I've done it with healthy people.
Okay.
I think the people that are close to the end of their lives already are in that process themselves.
Yeah. And then maybe they don't need to spend any time doing anything other than what they really love doing at that moment.
And staying present with what's going on.
Yeah. So the other question I had was, about this. I don't know if it's is it a plant medicine jade, Vilca?
Well, I was just Googling.
Yeah.
So I do ayahuasca really very often. And ayahuasca has there's another name for her, like mother of death or something like that, because a lot of times you're underwater feeling like you can't breathe. And you're like, you start to think, oh my God, am I going to die? I think all the time, like, oh crap. What are my children going to think of me? Like I went out, into nature and drank this tea and I died out here being this hippie. And so you go through all these stages of like thinking you're going to die and then letting go. And when you let go is when your journey actually begins and you go into this beautiful place where you actually receive your message of the night, But
so
you is that times infinity. I think you experience death like.
Well, one of our guests that we had on, Eric Godsey, which if you want to hear his whole experience with Vilca,
really
you can
good.
go back and listen to that. But he talks about going and doing Vilca. And is it supposed to be through the 1,000-year-old finger bone or whatever?
It doesn't have to be, but that's how he did it. Yeah.
There's some weird,
Most
ritual.
Psychedelic you can do.
But essentially
physically painful.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's supposed
physically
to,
and mentally and emotionally.
It's feel like you experience your own death. And you're dead for the time that you're, on this drug. But yeah, have you ever, it's not something in your practice then?
No, this is the first time I'm
ayahuasca?
actually hearing of it. Ayahuasca I'm very familiar with personally and otherwise, and DMT even, because in my experiences with DMT, I've often felt like this is what death feels like, or I'm dying. This is what it feels like to die. But I've never heard of Vilca before, and now as soon as we're done, I'm going to go everything.
I think you can only get it in the Peruvian jungle. Yeah. It's not something that's like found in America, like ayahuasca and DMT and
it doesn't sound like it's. According to Eric, it is not fun. It is not like a fun
even
experience.
For a week after, you're in pain.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a commitment. Yeah. But I have the same experience as you do with the others. Where you just it's really interesting how that happens, and then once you let go, the wisdom comes.
Yeah.
Kind of like most psychedelics, I find, when I'm trying to control them or like be in charge of the process, and then you kind of have to stop and just surrender, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah, I'm assuming that's similar though to getting through the denial part with death. With the struggle with death or end of life is once you can let go of the denial part and accept that that's coming, you can move on and accept whatever else, all the wisdom and beauty that comes with the end of your life.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion of what is your ideal way to die? What have you thought of as your ideal way to die?
Mine?
Yours.
Oh, yeah. I want to die around sunset. Because I love that time of day. I love all these transitions like bridges and dusk and dawn, but I want to die around sunset. I want to watch the sky changing. I would love to be outside. I'd love to hear the wind in the trees and maybe running water, but sometimes that sound irritates me or makes me curious. I want to go find the source of it. So I definitely want to hear the wind in the trees. I want to smell something delicious like frankincense burning. I don't want there to be much talking.
That's right here.
That's my girl. That's my girl. I don't want too much talking or noise. I would like it to be quiet aside from the nature sounds. Yeah, I want to be outside. I want to have some awareness that my death is coming so that I can get into the conversation and get into all the work that's necessary to die, like going through surrender and fear and all the things that I spend my life talking about. I want to experience them myself.
Do you feel like when someone has a sudden death that they have had something robbed from them because they didn't get to move through those end of life practices?
I wonder, because I think that they still have to do it on some level, and they have done it on some level. Yeah, because I don't know about this lights out phenomenon, right? There's a process of dying, no matter if it's sudden or not. The heart stops, the lungs stop, their brain function ceases, but the organs still were working for a while because the heart has been pumping and it's still sending blood. So blood is still delivering, or the body's still delivering blood to the organs that are still doing their job. So there's some process that's going on. I think what we think of as death in the Western world needs to be expanded a bit, because who knows when it's actually over, when the last cell stops. Is that when death is? Well, who can pinpoint that?
Yeah, it's really hard to accept though when it's a young child. For me, that's when I, especially when it's a violent death, like that's when that's what keeps me up the day that I hear of it. So
Yeah, yeah. With all my work in death, a lot of times it just doesn't make any sense. And a lot of times it just feels unnecessarily painful and nonsensical.
Yeah, that's a hard part of life, I guess, but that's also what keeps us not taking things for granted.
yeah, that's true.
In the best scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, in the best scenario. So one of my closest friends works in the hospice care industry, and though she doesn't work, nearly as close to or close with the dying or in such a direct manner as you do, she has had a huge change in the way she lives her own life because of the work she does and because of seeing death so regularly. Having a constant reminder that life is not something to be taken for granted seems to be such an important part of understanding life. So it seems a shame that we run from even just getting more comfortable about the topic, the way that we do. How has this job as a death doula evolved you as a person?
Oh, tremendously, leaps and bounds, because authenticity has become my primary pursuit. When I used to practice law, right? But I worked at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, so I was still doing, I was doing work that felt good in my spirit, and I only had to wear suits when I was going to court, and that was such a challenge for me. Let me tell you what. I'd try to pull my hair back and look as normal as possible, and that didn't work very well. And in this job, at least, I can show up in my full self all the time. And one thing that death constantly reminds me to do is to bring my whole self to the inquiry, my whole self to the job, to bring my whole self to wherever I am. Anything less is a cheat. I'm cheating myself, I'm cheating my death, I'm cheating everything by not bringing the totality of who I am. Yeah, so that's one tremendous way I think it's impacted me.
The podcast has kind of done that for us, Mercedes. Like, this is the one thing that we've been able to just show up as ourselves and be our authentic selves. And also, it's made me look at the rest of my life and think, if I'm gonna be someone who is trying to speak truth and changing lives, I have to make sure I'm living that truth. So it's really had, it's so different from your job, but it's really had the same effect on us.
Yeah.
It means you're living your calling, really, I guess.
I've thought about that too. Like, of all the different careers that I currently carry, if I knew today was the day I died and I had to pick one job to do, it would be the podcast. Like, I would definitely.
Yeah, I know. I was
this.
just telling someone that the other day. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. I think that's the definition of living your bliss. Like, when you'd be okay doing that on the day you die. Like, literally.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the thing that you feel that you can bring 100% of you to consistently.
Yeah.
Without apology.
It has to be that. I think that kind of goes hand in hand, authenticity and being in bliss. Kind of go hand.
Yeah.
So
I was talking to Adrian Grenier yesterday, who we're going to have on the show here soon, and we were having the same exact talk, and just how much this is affecting my life, and how everyone wants to love what they do, and so we're trying to make this our career. And it's him and a lot of my other friends, since the podcast has started, has noticed like a light coming back. So it's so interesting how when you step into your calling, your light shines.
It does. Yeah.
Truly. Yeah. I'd like to also add, when I mentioned earlier, but when I was practicing, I was in the midst of a deep depression for probably about a year. And to the point where I was on a medical leave of absence for mental health. And finding death work is the thing that brought me back to life. I think it was twofold. Not only me finding that thing that makes me quintessentially me, but also the constant inquiry about death and dying. Those two things were the things that brought me out of that depression and into like the wholeness of who I am. My skin cleared up. I gained weight again, like started feeling like in my body again.
Wow.
Taking up a lot more space, and it feels pretty good.
I love that. I've seen that in so many people.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how can death be a light in our lives, or how has it been a light in your life? You kind of explained it there.
Yeah, I think I did. Also, I think people often think that, this work is so sad and heavy, which it can be, absolutely can be, but there's also always some light in it. And I read this someplace. I wish I could remember. You're so good with the quotes, Jade. But something about if the light isn't coming through, you're not looking long enough. And I find that very much with my work and with death. We always find space for beauty. And that's not just me as an outsider coming in. It's often the people that are there as well. They generally find some beauty in it when they are looking.
That's interesting. When I was a teenager, I really wanted to work in geriatrics. Like that's what I plan on going to school for because I just love the elderly. I love old people. I rather hang out with old people than people my age because my best friend, he's not old, but he's sick, Sorry. I didn't say his name.
And you didn't call him old.
Yeah, he's not old, but there's something about people who are older than me that I just want to sit in their presence, and you can see in their eyes how they have so many stories to tell, And so I really wanted to go into geriatrics. And then as I got older, I changed my mind because I was scared that I was going to fall in love with all these people that were going to pass away. So it did. It felt like it did. It looked like a dark career path. But then hearing you talk, it's like, it's just such a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
This isn't related, but when we were talking here, I thought about the fact that people run so hard from thinking about death. Like even I know when I thought about doing this meditation, I don't remember what book I read it in, but to meditate into my own death, to like experience it as vividly as I can while I'm alive, as being such a powerful practice. So it brought to mind religion specifically, and that people use religion often as a way to navigate those existential questions, of course. And I don't even know what my question is here exactly, but just wanted to get your thoughts on how religion plays a part both in our denial of the inevitable and maybe in helping us move through, the fear of death. Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts about religion and how it frames our understanding about death. I mentioned to you too earlier that both of my parents are ordained ministers, and I grew up a missionary's kid traveling the world spreading evangelical Christianity. That's no longer the path that I walk. I chose off of it probably when I was about 15 or 16 and started doing a lot of exploration for myself, which meant that I started reading about a lot of different religions and trying to learn as much as possible. But looking at it objectively without the belief system is one thing, but being steeped in the belief is another altogether, right? Because all those stories then become truth. They land in the body. When I'm working with people nearing the end of life, those beliefs end up getting questioned. Almost everybody that I've worked with that is deeply religious, most of them begin to doubt on some level, because up until that point, they are merely beliefs. But when we're standing right at the precipice, you have to be strong in those beliefs because they're about to be tested.
Right.
They're about to be put, is this real or is this not?
You best be sure.
You best be sure. A lot of folks start to say, ooh, I'm not so sure. These are the things that I think. These are the things that I've been told. They are just beliefs. They're not based in fact or evidence yet. So what I often do is just work with people about what their beliefs are and help them get a little bit more firm in them or get clear about what they are to ease that fear and the questioning that comes at the end of life. I think the questioning is just kind of a part of the game, though. It's just kind of how it works. What we believe is just that until it becomes something that we know. And at the end of life is one place where it gets thrown into question.
Yeah.
I also sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I also often think about how religion is a really great way. I think you were kind of mentioning this, Mercedes, to create a framework for what happens after death, right? Because so many of the religions are based upon what happens after we die.
Yeah.
And creating codes of conduct for living for them. Yet, like Christianity, for example, I think it is kind of starting around death because that's the way that you gain everlasting life.
Yes.
Those who accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior will not perish, but shall have everlasting life. It's also directly playing into this fear of death while trying to remove it. You won't die if you do this thing. You're going to live forever.
Exactly. So that's exactly what I was going to bring up. I grew up in a church that preached Revelation every Sunday in detail. Like, you will burn forever and maggots will be eating your flesh, like type of fear. And this church that I was involved in, every October, we would do this, it would be like you would think you're going to a Halloween haunted house, but it was really, you were walking through what hell was going to be like according to Revelation. And I was one of the demons in there for a couple of years because I was part of this church, right? So they would walk through and it would be it would walk you through the life of sinners and then show them in hell. And I was like one of the people made up into a demon in this room, and you could see the fear on all these people's faces. And then in the very last room, there was a preacher who was like, there's a way out of this. You don't have to go through that. You accept Jesus into your heart. And they would love, and I am sure that at the core of their hearts, they were doing what they thought was right. So I'm not judging them, and I'm not trying to belittle them, because I know at the core of their hearts, they were doing what they felt was, right to do. But every October it was like thousands were saved, but it was all out of fear. And I know for me, a lot of my fear of death was because of the idea of hell, and a lot of my fear of living with my boyfriends, because the Bible is, I don't know, from what they said, the Bible says that I'm not supposed to do that. So then if I was living with my boyfriend, I'd start to fear like, oh dear God, if I die today, maggots are going to be eating me for eternity, So it's so crazy how much
power that can hold over.
Yeah, and it's so sad too, because spirituality and God can be such a beautiful thing in our lives when the fear is removed, And I do feel like the fear has been removed. I still pray every day. I still have a relationship with God. So it's just a different type, and it comes from a different place. But yeah, I just thought I just wanted to share that, because it's a really interesting thing that, is preached a lot in America.
I'm glad you did. And it's like such a great example of how we use fear of death in order to give us code of conduct for how we live, right? Do these things, accept this thing. And if you do that thing, then this won't happen after you die. But all the things that they want us to do are about how we're living.
Sure. It's so interesting. You talk about the control it gives, even the government or whoever you want to say is putting these spiritual practices in place sometimes, or making sure we adhere to them. Over the time that humans have existed on this planet, we've been always pushing different ideas down each other's throats to gain control over each other. But the other side of this, and we bring up religion and that type of thing a lot because it's one of those controversial topics that people also shy away from. There's a big gray area around it. But in that idea of control, there's also this control that we as individuals, when we go towards really any religion, it allows us to have some sort of control in what we expect to happen in the unknown, in those existential questions, after our death. So I guess I would just ask our listeners, as we always do on the Magic Hour, to explore not only, what you've been taught through your lifetime, but find new questions, and if something is scary, go towards it. That's why we always say seek the pain for positive gain. I think that's really what life is largely about, because every time you answer a question, you gain that little piece of knowledge. It's like, I don't know for me, but I don't know if that's how it is for everyone else, but for me, it's like I'm suddenly more alive than ever. I'm suddenly like living this life as full as I possibly can while I'm seeking that stuff out.
Yeah, that's like Jim Morrison said. Here's another quote: expose yourself to your deepest fear. After that, fear has no power, and the fear of freedom shrinks and vanishes. You are free. So that's like sums up exactly what you're saying.
How'd you have that shit on call? She was like, hold on, let me dial this quote up.
Got it.
It's like I have a bunch of monkeys in my brain with filing cabinets, and they're like listening to you at all times. Yeah. They're like, we got that one. And then they're going through all the files. Here you go.
Okay. Something I've been using in my life lately is the idea of thinking from what I call my deathbed head. And I've been pushing this on Jade a lot lately, especially when I come up against, of course, a tough decision. So basically, this means attempting to make decisions in the moment with perspective you might imagine having while you're lying on your deathbed, when, small trivial matters won't hold so much importance. When you're working with your clients, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I'm going to ask anyway, do they often express regrets from their lifetimes while thinking from their actual deathbed head?
Sometimes they talk about it. Sometimes people talk about it. Most often it seems to be around relationships and things that they said or didn't, or things that they did not say. Rarely the things that they said, but the things that they didn't say and things that they didn't do and how they didn't behave. So yes, that comes up quite a bit. I often use it as well. I call it the deathbed test, but I like deathbed head because it
sounds
a little bit better. Yeah, might borrow if that's okay.
Like a hair product.
Yeah, I really dig it. Deathbed head. It's
a powerful thing to think about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did it the other day when I was it was probably a couple months ago, trying to figure out whether or not I wanted to go to the movie. It was one of those days where I was just struggling to make any decision. Must have been PMS. But I was like, on my deathbed, would I care that I went to the movie? Would rather have stayed at home? What should I have done? And my deathbed self was like, it does not matter.
Yeah. I was going through something really tough last week, and Mercedes said, all she said in the midst of I was freaking out, and all she said was, what would your deathbed head say? And I was like, fuck, because I know, right away.
Yeah.
You know right
right
away.
away. Mm-hmm.
We fret over such big things. And it's like, at the end of my life, will this matter? Would I be glad I did it? Will I be sad I didn't do it? Will it matter at all? Right. And 90% of the time, it doesn't matter.
Your essence always knows.
Yeah.
Always.
Even just thinking, like, if the deathbed head is too scary or morbid for you because you haven't done the work that Alua is telling us to do today, you could even just think from your 5-year from now head. I mean, like, just 5 years from now, will this shit really matter? You know, like, that's even a perspective jump, of course, depending on how far you are from the end of, your life. But 5 years from now, most shit won't matter. Like, yeah. And the big decisions that you do need to make, and take conscious decision-making practices towards, you can figure that out by thinking 5 years down the line usually too. So either way.
But also, like, get out of the abusive relationship now. Get your, stop working the job that you hate now. Like, all those things that dim your light, like, putting it in that context, you're like, why stay in this any longer?
Why put this off? Start that certificate course now. Yeah. Like, and also in terms of stopping things, just starting things as well. Yeah. Like, just get going today. Yeah. Juicy. Very juicy.
Don't be stuck. I hate being stuck.
Unstuck yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm imagining that having these short relationships with people in their deathbeds must create a bit of a rush of getting to know someone, since tomorrow is never taken for granted for any of us. I'm wondering if this causes you to be incredibly present, to absorb as much bonding and connection as possible in the time available, and if that practice also bleeds into the rest of your life and into your relationships. So, like, how have your relationships with people who are not on their deathbeds changed?
Exactly as you mentioned. Presence is one of the most useful practices in this work, in that when somebody is talking, I'm paying attention to everything as much as possible. What they're saying, the tone they're saying it in, what they're not saying, the energy behind it, the vibration, how they're holding their body, where they're breathing, when they're not breathing. I'm actually listening.
Right.
And then also often parroting back to make sure that whatever is being said is clear, since communication matters, but particularly when somebody's not got so many words left to say and they're trying to communicate something important, like their desires for the end of life, maybe about life support. And so listening through the practice of presence has become one of the skills that I'm working on consistently. And so I find myself practicing it at AutoZone, where I was for 2.5 hours a couple days ago while the guy was changing my battery. Yeah. And our conversation got really juicy as a result of things I picked up when he was saying that I think he wasn't aware he was communicating. Mm-hmm. So it's supported a lot.
Oh, but I think like a superpower.
Yeah, literally.
Well, I'm sharpening it for sure, but I think it also
How are you sharpening it? Because this is something I'm really working on.
Yeah.
Practice, constant practice. Because not only am I listening to the words that you're saying, I'm also trying to listen to the context in which they come. Right. What are the assumptions and beliefs that inform what it is that you're saying? And like how you're sitting right now, it looks like there's an arm behind you. So you're supporting yourself up against something while supporting yourself forward. Like all of these things are constantly going into my understanding of the words that you're speaking. And I need to understand as clearly as possible, because these are life or death conversations that I'm having. They are death and death conversations that I'm having.
And you never know with anybody if,
tomorrow's promised,
Yeah, it really isn't promised anyone,
Truly. And also trying to just get clear on what their desires are. Mm-hmm. What are you truly desiring, and how can we bring that forth for you? What is your actual fear, and how can we do our best to dig into it or abate it a little bit?
Thinking to everyone, what do you really want, is really powerful. I'm trying so hard to work on being fully present with my kids. They're toddlers, so I'm always doing something for them, which makes it hard to be present with them, but also just with people. And I notice the more I put on my grounding cord, which is like a psychic term for just, the meditation practice that makes you feel grounded, the maybe more in my body I am. But what helps a lot when I'm in conversation with people is, of course, listening, but like also making sure I'm breathing deeply. Like I notice when I'm breathing like shallow breaths. And yesterday I was around someone that was I was really nervous around this person, and I couldn't be present. I was like Miss Chatterbox. Like I could not stop talking. And then the next person I was around, I was so present and like so helpful to their needs. And it was so obvious, the difference in my breath. So I think with the first person, had I just taken a noticeable deep breath and continue to do that as that person was talking and as I was just in that person's presence, it would have made all the difference.
I'm so glad you went there because I think it's the primary thing is being present with myself first, like also noticing aside from how you are sitting and what you're doing, what you're saying, what am I communicating to you in this conversation through how I am being, am I breathing shallow? Am I fidgeting with my rings, which I often do? Am I twirling my hair? Am I nodding incessantly because I'm uncomfortable somehow? And my nodding is something that I'm paying attention to more and more lately, but always like filtering my listening also through where I'm coming from, where I'm meeting them at through who I'm being. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah.
I love the idea of full body listening. Like just any way that whatever that means to you when you hear that full body listening, be more present in whatever ways you know how and have access to at this moment. And then, of course, you can seek out classes to become more intuitive and everything else. But just like that little bit, I feel like with everyone texting all the time and looking down at their phones all the time, it's like we don't have full body listening. I mean, it's very rare.
And full body, too, is part of your breath, like checking in with your breath. I honestly think I was holding my breath that whole time.
I love
first
that
person.
You
so
say
nervous.
that, too, because we just had on, why am I blanking on our last guest's name, Jade?
Anita Lane?
No, just 2 days ago.
Oh, London Angel Winters.
Thank you. We just had on London Angel Winters.
Yes. Oh, God, I thought of that too.
Specifically about breathing as this mechanism that basically within just a few moments of syncing your breath with another human, you're creating intimacy. And
yes.
And like Jade says, into me see. I mean, if you want to be fully absorbed by someone and have them fully absorb you, if you can sync up in your mannerisms and your breathing in whatever ways you can, you get to have that full body experience. And God, that's...
You said that like a man can't fully turn on the woman without matching her breath. So to like that, but that brings with it presence. That's probably what it, primarily brings. And then Peter Craig again mentioned when you hug someone for 6 seconds, it like helps you match their breath. And
But yeah, not just in romantic relationships. I mean, just with, like, I've been I've been thinking about asking people, like, not necessarily anyone not my husband, not my family members as much as people that I know well enough to ask this, but that would still probably look at me like I'm a crazy weirdo. That's kind of normal, happens all the time anyway. But just saying, hey, do you mind if we, like, before we get into this deep this conversation where we have to do business together, whatever it is, we have a few moments where we just breathe together and like sync our energies?
That's so interesting, Mercedes, because at our live South by event, I was thinking of like practices we should lead the group in, or that we could invite the group to have with us, but they'd be with strangers. But like, what a cool exercise it would be for connection. So
I so dig it. I'm so on board with all this. But breath is also kind of the linchpin of some of my work, because so much of it hinges upon the last breath, right? So much of it hinges upon the last breath. We take one in or we exhale, and then another one does not come.
Right.
And so constantly calling attention to breath is something that I try to do repeatedly, because we take millions of them over the course of our lifetime with no awareness. And there's going to be one that is going to be everything.
That is so strong. That is like, I have goosebumps all over my whole body right now. But tell me about that last moment when you watch someone take their last breath, and if you're synced with them, before they do that. What does it feel like for you? Do you feel that loss?
Yeah. I'm often not synced with them because very close to the end of life, when people are in active dying or imminently dying, the breathing patterns start to change. It's called Shane Stokes breathing, where it goes from the regular patterns that we're used to abnormal patterns, either some rapid breaths and then nothing for a while, like a period of apnea, or these like long, deep breaths with some apnea in between. So the patterns change, and I can't match it. I'm not syncing. But watching, when you're in that space, when I am in that space, and we're watching the breathing, knowing that at some point another one is not coming, it gets very, presence takes the forefront, because we're literally hanging on breath. And one comes, and then maybe there's a period of seconds where another one doesn't. And then maybe another one comes, but you're not sure in the in-between if that was the last one ever. It's so profound. There is a feeling of, I don't know if the word is loss. There is a sad sweetness. And I don't think that English language has a good word for it.
Is it calm?
Oh, it's incredibly calm. It's tremendously still. There's an incredible stillness right after somebody has died, right after the breath has
Tom
stopped.
talked about it on our episode, remember? He's been in the room when his parents passed and how just the feeling. But yeah, you're right. There's not a word for it.
I wish there was,
One
because
up,
it's a
girl.
stillness. I'm like, oh yeah, ooh, I get to put a bunch of bullets together. I'll let something.
We'll use it on this show. We will make that thing happen.
I have to think of one now. Yeah.
So we have a question from the Magic Mob. Jesse on Instagram asks, as a death doula, how do you work with someone with dementia? Or can you?
Yes. I'm often working with people in their lives. But let me tell you an interesting story about a woman that had dementia. She was 94 or 96 by the time I started visiting her. Her daughter had hired me. And in the weeks before she rapidly declined, she was saying individual words but strung together in a way that I didn't understand the sentence. And then before long, she wasn't even speaking words anymore, just syllables put together. And then shortly thereafterward, she wasn't breathing very well. And so she's on a machine. She was losing consciousness here and there. And so she was very rapidly declining. And nearing the end of her life, I was sitting next to her. Her daughter was gone. And she sat straight up in bed and looked at me and said, Herbert, I don't know how to do this. Please help me. And I said, oh, smiled at her. She then smiled back, and then she laid back down. When her daughter came in the room a little bit later and she asked me what had happened, I said, well, she sat up and she looked at me and she said, Herbert, please help me. And the daughter just was shocked. And I asked why. And she said, Herbert was her mother's first husband who died in a motorcycle accident when he was 21 or something like that. And mind you, in the weeks prior, she was no longer speaking coherent sentences anymore, but woke up and clear as day spoke a sentence to Herbert, Herbert, help me. I don't know how to do this anymore. And I was floored by that experience because she was clear.
Like he was in the room with her.
Well, that too. And she was totally clear in her communication. And so while working with people with dementia is not how it looks like traditionally, there's still work to be done in our presence with them and not underscoring the fact that they're still with us in a way, even though they may not be able to communicate in the ways that we're used to. Yeah. She also at one point told me she didn't want to be broken anymore. Yeah, I know. Squishy. Very squishy.
That terminal, I don't know if that you would consider that terminal lucidity, but we have another question from the Magic Mob. Jade, I think you have that.
Yeah. Brandon on Instagram asked, do you see many cases of terminal lucidity, and what do you attribute that type of last moment clarity to? Science or spirituality, or what are your thoughts?
And maybe just so we can describe what terminal lucidity is, which is, to my understanding, basically at nearing the end of your life, there'll be a really clear moment like you're describing, Alua, where if you're even in a coma sometimes, if you have Alzheimer's, depending on your case, you have this moment where you come back and you're just like fully present, and usually or hopefully you have friends and family around you to experience that with you and be, where they can absorb your love and that, and then soon after you pass.
I don't really attribute it to science. Yes, terminal lucidity is a thing. I don't necessarily attribute it to science because I think science is often trying to explain phenomena that it can't otherwise. I think I attribute it to matters of spirit, in that energetically it's all ramping up, and the last little bit of it gets to be used up and out before it can no longer. Similarly to the death rally. Are you familiar with the death rally? It's, I guess, an elongated portion of terminal lucidity, or it could be a part of it, where somebody is maybe in a coma or has been unconscious for a few days, and then they open their eyes and they sit up and they give orders, or they say things that they always wanted to say, or they ask for a milkshake, and they use up the last little bit of life force energy, and then that's it. I don't think it's science, but I'm not a scientist. Yeah, I'm a love worker.
Because you're connected to these people so close to their death, do you ever feel them after their death, their spirits or energies?
After the death, I'm often still in the room and do feel something present.
Like people say they feel their family members still like in their home shortly after and things like that.
Yeah, it feels to me like there's like a separation of some sort starts to happen, but then it doesn't go too far. And a lot of practices, particularly, I think it's Tibetan Buddhism, but the understanding is that the body doesn't separate from the spirit fully for at least 3 days, which is why a lot of death doulas and folks working at the end of life or in home funerals and home wakes suggest leaving the body at home for at least 3 days to give some time to disconnect if it is in your belief system.
That's interesting. I don't know what to think of this, but there was a guy that came to my house, to my apartment, and I don't have many visitors, so I'm always like, I'm really sensitive to energy, and I can sense the energy that comes into the home, and I'm able to see auras on some people, and I saw a brown, which is a very low functioning energy, and probably there was just some things that I, was like, oh man, gonna do. I didn't know what to think, but when he sat down, the reason why I bring this up is because when he sat down, I noticed a woman spirit that hadn't come with him sit down next, a feminine spirit sit down next to him on the carpet, just sat down on her knees, and she made it very clear that she was like, she noticed that I saw her, and she was like, don't worry, I'll leave when he leaves. I'm not here to do any harm. I'm just going to go wherever he goes. And it was so interesting to me because I had never had an interaction like that before, where there was no fear, and there was just okay, well, make yourself at home, I guess, And the next day I told that person's friend what I had seen, and I felt so weird even bringing it up. And he said, wow, his mom just passed away and they did not have a very good relationship. They were at odds when it happened. So it was just so interesting to me. I thought maybe when they're still trying to heal a relationship with a family member, they stick around even longer maybe, or something. I don't know. Or, a mother never wants to leave her child. So, I mean, if I passed, I'm sure I'd want to follow my kids around everywhere. I still don't know what to make of that experience, but I know what I saw and I know what I feel, and it's very odd because it's weird to even bring up to someone, but I know that I saw it. I know that I felt it. So
yeah. Alua, what do you think happens when we pass? What are your beliefs?
Well, my personal beliefs, I try not to share them so much publicly because it doesn't leave space for my clients to have their own.
Okay.
I'd be happy to talk to you guys about it privately.
Yeah, sure. What about the idea of the 21 grams? Do you feel something leave the room when someone passes?
No, I haven't felt that. I haven't felt something leave the room. I felt something still be present in the room. I think when we think, oh, they're gone, but it doesn't feel like anything's gone. It just feels like it's gone still, but it's not gone. Or not in my experience. Yeah.
Interesting. We'll never know, I guess.
We will know.
We won't know.
I mean, we will, but you know what I mean.
We won't be able to tell each other.
Yeah. But will we be able to communicate it? And will we still have consciousness as we know it in order to have the knowledge of it? Or will we just be it? Will we just be experiencing it?
Yeah. And will it because even part matter, of what again?
And will it matter?
Once we've crossed over, will we be like, that's not even a thought that comes, if we had conscious thought, why would that even be a thought? I don't know. There's so many ways to go with that.
I don't smoke anymore. I've used to smoke every night before bed, but I don't anymore. But I remember
otherwise people think it's cigarettes.
Well, it's get stoned in order to fall asleep, but not to experience being stoned. But I remember one of the last times I was thinking about death. Sorry for bringing this up actually, but I was thinking about death and I was like, at least if I were a tree, I would become a book to have. It's such a weird thought to have, and it stuck with me.
Didn't you once tell me that you always contemplate death whenever you smoke?
I think so.
And you always ask random ass questions. I don't even remember what they were, but you've said some to me.
And then good. If I were a tree, at least I would become a book. But then if I were put on a bookshelf, I'd be in another corpse of myself. I don't know. It was the weirdest, most I don't know. Sorry for bringing it up. Go on, Mercedes.
Love it. All right. We have a pick your poison from Jerry on Instagram. Would you rather have, by the way, these are super random.
We're called the Magic Hour. It's like a pick your poison.
Yeah. So they're two terrible things that you have to pick from. Would you rather have horrible short-term memory or a horrible long-term memory?
I think I'd rather have a horrible long-term memory.
Me too. God, it would make things easier.
Right? And also I'd just be here right now and meet somebody, be like, wow, look at you, magical being.
You're amazing.
Rather than all the times that you hurt me before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Short term would be so difficult.
Well, I mean, you will deal with that all the time with Alzheimer's, right?
I know.
I sure do. And I already struggle with trying to remember where my keys are.
Exactly.
Man, that sounds brutal.
I feel like I struggle with both long-term and short-term currently. Like,
you need to eat some walnuts.
I probably need to eat some walnuts, some selenium.
And you need that 8th hour of sleep.
I'm pretty good about that. But yeah, I think it's more just being present, like we're talking about, full body listening, full body being present, whatever I'm doing. Like if I can't recall something, it's probably because I wasn't present enough while it was happening.
Stress probably affects it more than anything, our memory.
Agreed.
Sure, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a few short questions we like to ask everyone who comes on the show. First off, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Don't get married.
I should have told myself
when I did. Don't get married when I did. That doesn't mean never, but just wait a little bit, honey. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We still are figuring out who we are at 25 for sure.
Majorly. And I thought that I knew what I wanted, but I had no idea.
Yeah, you're still becoming.
And I don't know about you gals, but I know that when I was much, much younger, like a young kid, I always thought, okay, when I'm 25, that's like when I should be getting married. And then
I really thought that too. I wanted my first kid at 25 when I was a teenager.
What? Like now when I look at 25 me, I'm like, hell no, that would never have been a good idea.
Even looking at the guys that I dated when I was 25, I'm like, that's where I used to lay my affection.
Right. That's the person that held all my power, but more about me and less about them, right? Like these were the choices that I made. Yep. Granted, there's some really wise 25-year-olds out there that get good partners and end up married beautifully. It was not the right choice for me at that time. Not a regret. I learned so much from it.
Yeah. There are teachers.
Teachers. Thank you.
No regrets, for sure.
So if you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
Oh, my. Oh, what would it be?
Our guests always get excited about this one.
I know.
Yeah?
Man, there's
so many good ones.
I know.
The Prophet?
Yes, I have it. I love it. A good one.
Ooh, man. I'm going to think about this for a long time. But The Prophet is the one that's coming.
Okay. Then that's it.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Okay.
I'm curious why, though.
Because it has such juicy tidbits about so many different parts of life. Like there's a whole chapter on death, on children, on marriage, on love, on like the earth, like just tidbits. Oh gosh, I have to think about this a lot.
We'll have you again next time we have you on. I'm sure I'll have a whole another list of questions after.
Really? We have 2 outlines.
Great. We'll do the rest next time.
Perfect. All right. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
I love you. 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 I love you.
Say that. It's really nice.
I love you.
Sometimes I remember in my younger years, before going through a stretch of dark years, I remember feeling so much love in my heart that I felt like I could hug the whole world at once. And I really want to get back to that feeling, like where you just are feeling one with love almost. Like, so I felt that from you when you were saying that, when I was looking at you, and I really want to get back there.
You will.
Yeah. And a practice that I really enjoy is that thing of like looking at somebody as just another reflection of self and like just another part of me. It makes it so easy to love them.
Yeah, we see in others what's also in us.
Yeah. Juicy. Another thing I'd probably say is it's okay.
Yeah, it is.
It's okay. It's okay. Other than, I love you and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. It's part of the plan. Trust the universe.
Okay. Actually, okay.
Thank you.
These are great questions.
Yeah.
These are great questions.
Thank you. They're our staple questions. So Alua, before we let you go, where can people find you and your work?
Oh, you can always find me on the internet because right now I'm in the desert in California, so you wouldn't be able to find me.
Don't tell us where to find you.
But on the internet, you can find me at goingwithgrace.com or on Instagram, going_with_grace. If you don't add the underscores, you will end up at like a yellow lab someplace in England.
Oh.
Yeah. Somebody got to it before I did.
All right.
But going_with_grace on Instagram or on Facebook, same Going With Grace.
Fantastic.
Okay, awesome.
This was...
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I feel like we were hanging out with another best friend.
I know.
Yeah.
It just felt like really in sync and comfortable. So thank you. Thank you so much for bringing that.
And I also just want to give you some praise for being so good at articulating answers to such tough places. I know you've spent obviously a lot of time thinking about these things, a lot more time than we certainly have, and probably than most of the population has. But being able to like get words across so that you can express exactly what you want said is way hard, as we find on this podcast regularly. So you being able to do that is something I really appreciate you taking the time to learn how to do, however you have done that.
Thank you. A lot of practice and focus and presence, but thank you very much. I receive it.
Thank you so much, Alua. So if you hit stop on your...
we're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I know. We would
Should I hit it
longer,
now?
But yeah. So if you hit stop, the little square, do you have the instructions?
I do.
Okay. So if you just follow the instructions, you export it as a wave, and then you'll just upload it on the free site, WeTransfer. Because it's a long file, it'll only take you a couple seconds to upload it. But because it's a long file, it may take like 10 minutes to actually send. So just make sure you don't, shut your computer until it says sent. But yeah, the steps that you'll actually have to do should only take you a couple of seconds.
Okay.
Cool. All right. And let us know if you have any questions on that at all. We will help you out. Adam is moving his house right now. Our producer's moving his house right now. So he's kind of not available at the moment. So let us know.
And we'll come up with some really cool promo videos for this that we'll be tagging you in on all of social media, but we'll also email them to Maya. And Maya. Okay. We'll also email them to Maya, and y'all are free to do with them, if y'all want to share, whatever. But either way, we'll be tagging you a lot that week.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Do you have any idea about when it might come out?
Let me look at our schedule. So we have Mercedes is out of the country for like pretty much 2.5 months. So right now we're actually recording 3 times a week.
Wow.
So so we do have, I know it sounds late, but probably early April, because we have them so stacked up. But we might actually air this in 2 parts. Sometimes we do that when they're just as great as this was.
Yeah.
So there may be 2 weeks of promos, but either way, we'll give y'all a good week's heads up. So yeah, we're super excited to air this.
Yeah.
Me too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where are you going, Mercedes?
I'm going to be in Dublin. Let's see, they have me like all over Europe. I work for a mixed martial arts organization called Bellator, and they have a tour that's taking on Europe right now. So we're kind of skipping like Amsterdam and London, and there's a Newcastle show coming out. I mean, all over the place. So
It's really fun. Yeah.
Great fun.
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
So lots of work to get ready.
I know, like packing and
Sure.
unpacking. My whole life.
So we'll do all that, and then just thank you so much. We're so excited to get feedback from everybody. This was it was not a dark interview at all. Like I thought it. Like it wasn't heavy. It was actually really, really light giving. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You guys, this was a lot of fun and easy, super simpatico, as you were saying. Very, very simple. Thank you for your questions. They were insightful and thoughtful and well asked, because not every podcast interviewer, you guys are skilled at what you're doing. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thumbs up. 2 of them.
Thank you. I'll give it back.
Thank you,
you.
Alua.
Okay. We'll see you.
Yeah, so we'll stay on. So if you just hit your little red hang up button, we'll
good
stay
to
on
go.
and continue.
Oh, with each other.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, we're going to keep hanging out? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let me know
bye.
anytime you're in Austin, because I'd love to hang out.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. You're
I'm
going
in
away for a
LA.
couple of-
Yeah, I'm in
Oh.
LA. But where are you normally?
I'm currently in Joshua Tree. I'm in Landers. Well, I've been abroad for 6 weeks, and I'm going back and forth between DC and LA now because my boyfriend's in DC.
Okay.
But I'll be around.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Maybe when you come to LA, Jade, then we can all get together.
I come every
Yes.
3 months, so let's plan on it. We'll email Maya and see if you're available.
Yeah,
That'd
and
be
if you happen
awesome
to be in Austin during our South by Southwest, you have to come.
Oh, this year?
Yeah,
Is it in March or April?
it's March.
It's March. It's March 9th through the 18th, and we're having a Move with Magic Day. So it's all based on movement, and we're having Parangi headline, which is, I don't know if you know of him, but it's like a very his music is transcendental. It's amazing. So it's going to be a big ecstatic dance, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe boyfriend wants to go to Austin.
You never know.
Yeah, sure he
Putting it
does.
out there.
Yeah, he's so down with music festivals. Okay. Bye, ladies.
All right, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for my mic.
Sure.
Oh, of course. Thank
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye. Oh, she was so nice.
Oh my God, she's
Harmful.
amazing. Yeah.
I guess it's from her work, because no other guest has been that fully present and that fully aware. I guess.
That was just so. I mean, I already was excited about it, like I was saying earlier, but it was just so much more than I could have expected.
Me too. Glad. It was honestly one of the best ones we've ever had. But keep those other questions, because maybe like in a year we can have her on again. Because I want to have Paul Selig on in a year again, and of course Tom, and Eric Godzi, and then her. We are. But keep those questions, because they would be good follow-up questions for the next one, since we already covered this.
For sure.
Okay. All right. So let's act like she just got off.
That's what I thought we were doing. But let's do it again.
Well, that was good. So,
Adam cut it too many times. Wow. So that was awesome.
I think what we did was good. Just end it.
Okay.
Because it was good. It was natural.
Yeah. I don't remember what I said last, though.
Actually, I think it was all good. He can just take out the chitter chatter, because he can say that we want to have him on in a year from now.
All right. So well, let's move on to our magic trick then.
Okay. What do you have?
So I'm not going to stray too far from this episode. I just want to remind people to think from their deathbed heads. This is, like I said earlier, a trick that I use as often as possible, especially in times when you're trying to make a tough decision, or you come up against something that you're just not sure on which way to go. If you're trying to determine whether you'll regret an action or a direction you're contemplating, thinking from your deathbed head is like the quickest, easiest few moments you can take to head you in the right direction. That's it. What about you?
I really like that. It's such a powerful question, like I was saying when Alua was on. So mine, I'm going to keep it really short and sweet, because I want everyone to really be able to focus on the core message here. So the magic trick is, what makes you feel happy and light? That is what your essence wants. What makes you feel dull and low is not what your essence wants. So just something's making you feel bad, it's something that's, lowering your energy. There's certain people in my life that when they come in the room, I feel a noticeable lowering of energy in me. And that may be something that I need to work out in myself as well. But just get out the things that make you feel bad and the people that make you feel little. And also find out why those buttons are pushed and work on that. But just move towards the things that make you feel happy and light. That is what your essence wants. That is what your higher self is, asking you to do. That's why you feel that noticeable difference. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think there are such thing as energy vampires to some degree, but I think we have to take responsibility too for, like you're saying, like recognizing what it is in ourselves that's allowing that person to even hold space enough with you that drains you.
Yeah. Well, we have matching pictures with certain people. There's certain people that we see in them something that we're unhappy with in ourselves, because everyone's a mirror. And so there could be that. That's why we have to ask ourselves, why is this button being pushed? Why does someone catcalling me push my button? Is it because I think that all I have in my career is my looks? Like, there's things that are deeper there. Yeah. But what I'm trying to express is that it's funny you said energy vampires, because the psychic lingo term is a psychic vampire. So when you're a very grounded person and you're always working on cycling out your energy and keeping good energy, people that are not working on that tend to gravitate to you because they feel better around you. And you always doing that work means that you're going to take on their energy and cleanse it for them. And then you feel drained and you feel a lowering of your energy, but they keep coming back because they keep feeling better, right? They keep feeling like, oh man, I just feel so much better when I'm around Mercedes. It's because you're grounded and you're cleansing their energy for them, whether you're doing it consciously or not. So that's what, the psychic term psychic vampire means, but it's a very real thing.
Yeah, that's a tricky tightrope to walk too. That's hard to say. A tricky tightrope to walk, because
those people are useful in your life.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that, especially I noticed that on, like, you go on social media and you'll see something that says, get those people that give you bad vibes out of your life and rid yourself of the energy vampires. And you see all kinds of things that are asking people, like, or telling people, hey, you should just remove these people from your life. Sometimes you gotta let people drop out of your life that are sucking your energy or whatever. But the thing is, I think if we can also remember that, like you're saying, those people,
they're not doing it on purpose.
Well, not only that, but that they're a reflection of us in some way. So it's like almost, yes, take consideration that the people in your life might be not serving you, you know, or might not be the best thing to have around you at the moment. But don't just remove them consciously so that you can take a break to make the effort, you know, take the effort and do the work on what you need to fix in yourself. And then come back around and see if they're doing their own work and you guys can maybe mesh up.
Yeah. And there's a difference between people who are coming in your life and you can use as teachers for that, and people who are just carrying a negative energy and refusing to deal with their trauma and grow themselves. And there's no benefit there. That, you know, that definitely does happen. But I think that if you're going to choose to keep that in your life, then you have to also realize you're going to have to do even more work on yourself, on your grounding, on your energy. And, you know, both are hard journeys, but
it's okay to take breaks too. Like we feel like we see things so black and white, like we have to just discard people, you know? And I think it's just not reality. Like the reality is if you discard this person fully, they're going to come back into your life as the form of another person or another thing that's an obstacle that you just haven't dealt with yet. If you didn't deal with the lesson or use that person as a teacher and as a mirror. For sure. 100%. Yeah. So I love that magic.
Mercedes, I was thinking during this interview, I don't know if anybody else is going to find this funny, but I was thinking about death, and I was thinking about if you and I were, I'm not stoned, but I was thinking about if you and I were like trapped in a cave together or like a well or a tunnel, whatever, and we were trying to figure out how to survive, that we'd be the perfect pair as yin and yangs, because you would figure out how to get us out of the situation, and I would talk so much and throw like random things out so much that I would help us forget that we're in the situation. So I don't know why that came to me.
We might be working against each other in that case. Like, Jade,
we gotta. Where'd you put the hammer?
I was gonna say it now. If I get trapped in a well, I need someone who can do a solid like 20 pull-ups, which is not me and not you. We need someone to pull our asses out of that fucking well.
My strength is in my body.
Unless we figure out how to levitate out that bitch.
Okay.
Random thought of the day.
There. Yeah. All right, Magic Mobbers. Thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey with us. If this episode held some magic for you, please share it with your friends and family. This would mean so much to us. And also don't forget to join us on our Instagram page at The Magic Hour and let us know what your favorite episodes have been so far. We want to know what's lighting you up.
Yes, and we release a new episode every Wednesday, so you can catch us next week again, or go listen to some of our past episodes in our podcast library. We'll meet you there. Until then,
be a light.